you can improve your life, you can improve your home, you can improve your mindset simply by removing things.
Welcome to Everybody Pulls the Tarp, the go-to podcast for high performers. I'm Andrew Moses, and each week I talk with Olympians, pro athletes, TV stars, Grammy winners, best-selling authors, CEOs, and other high performers to uncover their success secrets. Every conversation is jam-packed with inspiration and actionable ideas we all can apply to our own lives, personally and professionally. Get ready for a behind-the-scenes look at the techniques, processes, and mindsets powering the world's most successful people. Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Everybody Pulls the Tarp. This week, my guest is Shira Gill. Shira is a world-renowned organizing expert and the best-selling author of 3 books, including Minimalista, Organized Living, and her latest book, Life Styled, Your Guide to a More Organized and Intentional Life. Over the past 15 plus years, Shira has helped thousands of people reduce clutter, get organized, and create more space in their lives for the things that matter most to them. Her innovative processes and toolkits can be applied by anyone, regardless of budget, space, or lifestyle. Shira's work has been featured by Good Morning America, HGTV, Architectural Digest, and the New York Times. In our conversation, Shira explains how and why we get disorganized in the first place, and what we can do to fix it. Shira shares tips on how to stay organized once you've gotten organized, and how to create winning systems and habits that work for you. But as you'll hear, my conversation with Shira is about so much more than decluttering our homes and workspaces. It's about organizing our lives so we can become the best version of ourselves and show up for the moments and people in our lives that matter most. I've already started putting many of the ideas Shira shared into action, and I hope you take away as much from this conversation as I have. Oh, and one more thing. This podcast is presented solely for educational and entertainment purposes. It is not intended to be a substitute for the advice of a physician, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional. So, let's pull the tarp and get straight to Shira Gill. Shira, where I want to begin, let's just start at the top. How and why do we get disorganized?
Well, I think most of us have a volume problem more so than we have an organizing problem. So I think we've reached this kind of point in time where the things that we own us a little bit, if that makes sense. So what I've observed is that most people just simply own and have more than they can keep up with and more than they can keep organized, right? Because organization is actually quite simple. It's basically putting similar things together, grouping like with like. That's organization. Your 5-year-old can organize their Halloween candy in 2 seconds, right? But if you give them a room full of Halloween candy, it's going to be overwhelming and paralyzed. And so whenever people ask me about organization, I kind of instantly go to well, let's talk about volume first.
So then, if it's really something that's simple that we make overly complicated,
yeah.
What is the biggest misconception that people have about organizing? It could be their homes, their lives, anything.
Yeah, I actually think you nailed it. It's that it's complicated, right? I think people think organization is a really serious skill that some people have and are innately born with, and some people just didn't get the gene. They don't have that gift. And what I can tell you as an organizing expert is that anyone at any age can learn how to be organized, and it's quite simple.
Do you find that it is hard for people to apply that discipline and that skill to different areas of their lives? Are there people that are really good at applying the discipline in one area, but they just, for whatever reason, cannot get over the hump in another aspect of their life? And why, if so?
Yeah, 100%. So I would say most people find that they can be organized at work. They kind of compartmentalize and they say, I'm here, I'm a professional, I've got to have this persona, and being perceived as someone who's successful and has their stuff together. Then at home, They're tired. They kind of let their hair down. They're like, I don't have time. I got to get dinner on the table. And all of the things that they do, the strategies, the systems that they implement at work somehow just don't get implemented once they come home. I see that almost across the board. And the other really simple example I would say is like kids at school, right? They go and maybe they have a cubby and they hang up their backpack, they hang up their coat, but then suddenly at home, they throw their stuff everywhere. And there's just not the same standard or system in their home.
So what about like in one domain, right? Like with work and professional life, I like to think I'm very organized in terms of scheduling my meetings and managing my travel and different things like that. But if you were to look at my email inbox, you would be pretty concerned. And maybe we'll get to organizing our inbox later, but take me through that. Why are there certain aspects where I feel pretty confident and disciplined and like another area in that same domain, which I feel like is completely a mess?
Yeah. Sometimes it's just a matter of deprioritization. Like it's like you're really prioritizing certain things and other things just have to fall by the wayside. And sometimes it is more of a mental block. Like I find with people in their homes, there's often this intrinsic belief of, I'm just not good at this. I never have been good at it. I've always been a slob. I've always been a disorganized person. And then I'll ask for examples like, well, what is it like at your office? What is it like in this scenario? I find that most people have at least one place where they feel that they are solidly organized. And sometimes it is like they're organized with their email inbox, but their physical home is a disaster or vice versa.
So I heard you talk about two minimalist principles which you apply. And to me, like when I hear you describe these, it makes a lot of sense to me, but it's like harder to put into action. You talk about these two minimalist principles that you apply. First, you have to clarify what's important or what's essential. And two, you have to just simply let go of the rest. So let's start with the first, clarifying what's important. Why is that important to this process? And how do we begin to start to do that?
Yeah. So I would say I'm a values-based organizer, right? I don't organize for the sake of making things tidy. I organize to help people optimize their lives. So we have to know what we're optimizing for. Otherwise, we're just moving piles around and putting labels on things. And why does that matter?
And headed to the container store for no reason.
Oh gosh, yes. So I always start by just asking my clients or in my books, what matters to you now and why? Do you like your reasons? And it's shocking how out of touch most of us are with the answer to that question. I find I really have to push and I have to ask a lot of follow-up questions for people to claim what is important to them. And I think it's because by claiming a priority or a mission that's the most important, you automatically have to let go of a lot of other things that have to be devalued. And nobody likes that feeling of letting go or saying no. And so I really have to push people like, what is it in this moment? Is it your career? Is it your marriage? Is it your health? Like, what's the one thing? And then we look at how can your home or your space aid in supporting that thing.
How do you reconcile the idea that there are things that are important to you now, but there are things that might be important to you in the future, and you don't want to feel like you're forgoing all those things in the future that may be important to you to focus on the things that are important to you now in that context?
So the deal is basically you just can't do everything well all at once, right? We know this. You can't multitask that effectively. Most people can't. And you can't claim multiple priorities and knock all of them out of the park at the same time. So what I like to tell my brain to give it some relief is we're going to go all in on this one thing and we're going to kill it. And then all these other things, I'm going to park them in the parking lot. I'm going to note them so I have them to come back to. So even having a physical place like a notebook to write down all of those other ideas or goals or priorities, or a Google Doc or the notes app on your phone, your brain wants to be heard. And so our brains will scream at us, but what about this? What about this? And if you just say, it's been noted, I'm writing it down, we're going to get to it after we accomplish this first thing.
So in a way, it becomes like this parking lot where you're processing all these ideas and you're giving it a place to go.
Exactly. You're saying, I hear you, brain. I hear all these ideas. They're not going to get lost. We're not going to forget about them. We're honoring them by giving them a safe parking spot, right? But we can't deal with it now. So, like for me, if I'm writing a book, I can't also launch a new podcast because I won't do either of them justice. But my brain is saying, but we want to do a podcast. It's a perfect time for a podcast, right? So I just write it down and I say, maybe that will be the very next thing I do when I'm done with the book.
Well, that resonates with me. I have like 7 spiral notebooks sitting over here. 6 of them tucked away in a drawer, one of them on the desk where I just continuously log different ideas. And I think, now that you've explained that, I think I understand a little bit more about the why it helps me. In terms of setting intentions or finding the purpose as to why we're organizing, I joked about the person who, and I've been this person before, I want to get organized because it's organizing season. So the first thing I'm going to do is drive to the Container Store and buy a bunch of things and then come home and have no idea what I'm going to do with them. Let's talk about some examples. Like if somebody listening says, okay, I want to find my purpose. Like what's an example of a purpose? Is it as simple as, well, I want to be able to host more gatherings at my house. And I want to be able to do that more easily because I want to surround myself with the people that I love and care about. Like, is that at its core a purpose for organizing?
Yeah. So I would say finding your purpose can feel kind of too broad and elusive for people. So it's more like, what is a new result you want to create in your life? I think that's a more helpful question for people. And so like the answer you gave is great. Like, I want to be able to host and entertain and have people over without being embarrassed, right? Or I've had a lot of clients who are like dating after divorce and their home doesn't represent the new them, right? It has signs of their ex and this past life that they feel stuck in. And so they want to have a clean slate that invites new opportunities and new people. Or it could be like, for me, one of my greatest motivations is I want to travel the world and I want to see as much of the world as I can. And so I know the less stuff I own, the more money I have, the more resources I have, and the more time I have, because I'm not spending every weekend rearranging my home or sorting through piles, right? I can just hit the road and go travel. So it has to feel compelling to you and it has to feel motivating.
Okay. So we talked about kind of step 1 or principle 1, clarifying what's important.
Mm-hmm.
I think I get that now.
Okay.
Principle 2, let go of the rest, everything that's not important or essential. How do we do that? That to me, like if I'm thinking about my own life, that's the hardest part.
Absolutely.
I think I can do some retrospective thinking and take pause. I'm good at kind of pausing periodically and trying to understand, well, what's important to me now? What may be important to me near term? But the letting go is very, very hard for me in a lot of contexts of my life. So let's talk about it like through this lens of organizing. How do we start letting stuff go? And then I probably have more questions for you about that because I feel like that's an endless topic we could talk about there.
It is. Yeah, that's the real meat of it for people. And you're not alone. I think that is the hardest part of this process. Like once you've clarified what you want, then you have to actually roll up your sleeves and get to work making decisions. And each decision, like whether it's even to keep this rubber band or this pen, causes the brain to burn energy, right? And we want to save energy and enjoy our lives. So sitting and making 9 million decisions in a row is exhausting for people. So I like to try to make it much less overwhelming by challenging people to do one micro area at a time. So that could look like I'm just going to address the surface of my desk and I'm going to ignore the rest. And that's going to be like a 15-minute win. Or I'm going to tackle one drawer. I'm going to take everything out. I'm going to wipe down the drawer. I'm going to decide what actually belongs in this drawer and fits with my vision of who I want to be and how I want to live. And that's it, right? So all of these little micro wins will add up to a massive transformation. But I would say the biggest mistake that I see in my work is people saying, okay, I'm going to get organized. And they just take their entire house by storm, get completely overwhelmed and paralyzed, and then do nothing. So we want to make it like, even if you just say, I'm going to set up a donation basket by my front door, and I'm going to challenge myself to put one thing in it every day before I go to bed. Then at the end of a year, you've put 365 things to get out of your house, right? You've removed a lot of clutter.
So I've heard you talk about the focusing on a category or a micro category, like one drawer or one part of your closet. I've also heard you talk about, and I tried this in kind of the lead up to our conversation today, and it really helped me. The idea of moving the stuff in that micro category to somewhere else to process and think through it. So I took one category of my closet. I started with like sport jackets, and I just moved them to another room. And I said, okay, I kind of asked myself two questions, and you tell me if I did this right. I basically said, have I like worn this sport jacket in like at all in the last 2 years? And then second, like if I were to put this sport jacket on, like would I put this sport jacket on tomorrow if others were clean and like back from the dry cleaner? And if the answer was like I hadn't worn it in 2 years and I wouldn't wear it tomorrow if I had other stuff, then I put it in a pile to donate. But I was amazed at this idea of like how much easier it felt because I had moved it to another space.
Totally. Yeah.
What is the reasoning and science behind that? And how do we do that more?
Yeah. So I discovered this kind of just by accident, working with clients. I would open a closet and I would say, okay, let's look at this and assess it. And instantly people would say, oh yeah, this is all fine. This is all good. And so what I would do is I would say, okay, let's just look at it methodically in a different context. And I would take everything out of their closet. Even just putting it on their bed in the same room is like a context switch where now your brain is looking at this with fresh eyes instead of just saying like, basically, yeah, this goes there. It's fine. I'm used to seeing this is what you're saying. And I found that typically when I remove everything from its context, like taking everything out of the drawer or removing it from the closet, putting it in a different room or surface, people tend to get rid of 30 to 50% of what they just told me they want to keep all of, right?
Wow.
And so I think I don't know the exact science behind it, but I think anecdotally, it's just that when you see something in a fresh context, you can question it in a different way. It's so habitual seeing the same stuff in the same place. You kind of go, yeah, that's all fine. It belongs there. But if you're now looking at it and you ask some excellent questions, like, would I wear this tomorrow? How have I worn it and enjoyed it in the past 2 years? I like to ask, would I buy this tomorrow for full price? Would I bring it into my home intentionally now? And sometimes when people get really stuck, I just say, could someone else get more use out of this than you? Because sometimes people get really stuck, but then the idea of generosity or helping can be very motivating. Like, well, yeah, this is an okay jacket. I don't really wear it, but maybe somebody literally doesn't have a jacket and this could change their life. That feels really good.
What about the sentimental stuff? So I am a collector. In like a great context. I mean, I was 5 years old and someone handed me an autographed baseball from a New York Mets player. And I thought that was pretty neat. And over the years, I've accumulated a lot of sports memorabilia, which is something that I enjoy, organizing, and something that frankly is like a huge conversation starter because it's in one place in our home. And when people come over, they love to explore this stuff that I've collected. So that stuff, I'm a collector. I'm also a very sentimental person. And sometimes I feel as though I hang on to too much and I don't know whether I, should be letting certain things go to make more. How do we think about the sentimental stuff through the let it go prism? I feel like I'm quoting Frozen here as I keep saying, let it go.
I love it. Yes, we want to let go, but we want to be ruthless, but not reckless, especially with sentimental items. And so I'll give a personal example. My father died about 10 years ago unexpectedly. And I was the only family member in California. And so suddenly I had an entire home filled with his stuff to figure out, what do I keep? How much do I keep? And I live in the Bay Area where we have these small 100-year-old homes with no storage and no garages. And so what helped me in that moment was setting a physical boundary that made sense. So I said to my husband, like, we have this entire 3-bedroom house that obviously we can't take the contents of my father's home and plop it into our home, but I want to be smart about this. And so we have this little postage stamp sized basement. We kind of calculated we could keep about 10 banker box sized bins. of stuff. And so having that limit for my brain, especially with something that was so emotional and overwhelming, gave me this constraint that was really, really valuable, where I could then look at the entirety of his home and all of those sentimental things and say, what are the ones that matter most to me that are worth the space in my small home? And I basically whittled down in a few days from his entire 3-bedroom home with a basement and a garage and an attic to 10 banker boxes. And so when I'm working with a client who says, like, I don't know how many pictures to keep, or I don't know how many letters to keep, what I have them do is just decide, like, in your home, where do you want to store this? How much space do you have? What feels like a reasonable amount for you to kind of keep and maintain and dust and take care of? And then we use that as the barometer. And the other thing I would say is, it's interesting to me that we keep the most precious things buried in a basement collecting dust until we die. And so I think what I love about your example is it sounds like you have these collections that you care about that you actually display and enjoy and other people enjoy, and it's a conversation starter. My biggest tip for people is, like, take those things that are sentimental, even if it's like a letter. Like, I framed my favorite letter that my dad ever wrote to me and blew it up, and now it's a piece of art in our home, right, and people talk about it, right? But I didn't keep 10 boxes of letters because I didn't have the space. And I don't think I'd be treating them with a lot of respect if I just shoved them in my gross basement, to collect dust till the end of time.
And you wouldn't be enjoying it the way you're enjoying something that's on your wall. I recently tried something, and I kind of just in my head coined this phrase, like, clutter to collectible. And I actually applied this. I applied my sports memorabilia hobby to figuring out what I was going to do with both of my daughters' first soccer and softball cleats, respectively. So each of my daughters had completed their first season, one of softball, one of soccer. And I'm like, I love these. I have their first shoes that we got them, their first set of sneakers that we got them when they were babies, sitting on a shelf. And I said, okay, what am I going to do with these? Like, I don't want to give these up. So I said, let me turn them, but I can't have these dirty soccer and baseball cleats just like sitting around the house. So I kind of said, I'm going to turn clutter into a collectible. What I had them do is I had them each autograph the cleats, and I put them on the shelf with the sports memorabilia that's signed by Hall of Famers and other. And I felt like that was a really cool way of integrating it into that display. And I felt so much more free to take the other shoe and just put it where an old shoe probably should go, which is either donated or in the trash. Are there other things that we can do in our lives to repurpose things? I mean, you turn the letter into something that you frame. I turned the cleat into like a piece of sport memorabilia. Talk about that for a minute. Any other things that we can do to kind of repurpose and reorient stuff?
Yeah, I love that clutter to collectible. You should trademark that one. I think a lot of it is like figuring out how you can either keep one token from a collection and really highlight it in your home. Instead of keeping a million things, you take the one precious one. An example is, like, I had a client who was an only child, and she inherited literally like 24 tea sets from every single. It was like just heirloom upon heirloom, and she didn't even drink tea. And so she was like, my house now is like a museum to teacups. And so what we decided to do is have her make this one unique set by taking one from each collection.
Okay.
So she then had like all of these different unique teacups and saucers. And then she just donated all of the rest to people who were rebuilding homes from scratch. And so I often like that idea of like one from a collection, if you don't have the storage space or capacity. And then also just really thinking creatively outside the box. Like, how can I turn my collection into art? How can I do something interesting with scale? Like, I had a guy who had a little mini fire truck, and he had a photographer take a picture of it and blow it up like the size of a wall. So it became this incredible piece of art, but then he actually could get rid of the fire truck itself. I've had people who are really sentimental about t-shirts make a quilt where they take a little scrap of each t-shirt, like every race they ever ran in, they make it into a quilt. So it's looking at like, how do I take all these things that maybe I have no use for and make it into either one utilitarian thing like a blanket, or a piece of art where I'm taking a photo or framing it, or like you displaying it in kind of a cool, creative way.
All right, everyone. We'll get back to the conversation momentarily. But first, I want to tell you about my free weekly email newsletter, Tarp Pullers. Each week, I share an uplifting and inspirational tarp pulling story that is sure to brighten your day. And I also highlight some of the most powerful ideas I've learned on my journey talking to 200 and counting of the world's top performers. The newsletter is short, concise, and a reader recently told me this. She said it makes her day every time it hits her inbox. Go to everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter to sign up today. So getting into some of the specifics, let's start with organizing our home.
Mm-hmm.
Where are the biggest problem areas for people?
I would say kitchen counters are a real magnet for clutter, especially for people who have families, kids, a lot of action coming and going. I would say dining room tables and kitchen counters tend to just be a real magnet for the dumping ground of papers, mail, school projects, anything coming and going. And I would also say entryways, like I write about in my first book, Minimalista, like your entryway is the first impression that people have of your home. And in my experience, most of them look like a heap of trash. And that's not me trying to be mean. It's just really what I see every day when I go into people's homes. I say, why do you want the first thing that people see when they open the door to be a pile of muddy sneakers, right? Or a bunch of backpacks? I have a very small home with almost no storage space. Our house was built in 1916, but we have been able to figure out how to have like this minuscule contained closet that we built with doors that contains all of those things that typically get dumped, like the backpacks and the dirty soccer cleats. So at least they're behind closed doors and we have kind of a functional drop zone. So I would say like those are the big target areas.
So let's dig into that a little bit. Whether or not someone listening has a proper entryway or a large entryway or a mudroom or doesn't have a mudroom or what are some of the simple things that people can do to get a hold of that entryway concept and make it work for them?
Totally. So you want to think about, you can kind of play detective with your clutter. Like, what is it and why is it here? Right. And so often if I see a pile of stuff, I will ask my client, is this here just because you were tired, or is it here because it doesn't have a place to go? There's no assigned place, say, for the shoes that go by the front door. And often it's that. It's just like, oh, we forgot to make a system. So the first thing is like looking at whatever gets dumped in your home and asking those questions. What is it? Do we need it in the first place? If so, does it belong here? Does it make sense here? And finally, do we need a simple system to contain it? I think a lot about containing versus displaying. So like in an entryway, you probably don't want to stare at dirty shoes, but most people are okay with staring at like a few coats hung on a hook. Like, so you want to think about what are the things we're okay seeing and what do we want to contain? And then it's very easy to buy a handful of baskets or cubbies or something to contain those things that are currently getting dumped.
So let's go back to the kitchens then.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you talk about this too. I think it's your brother is a chef.
Yeah.
Your brother's a chef.
Yeah.
And even he says that like most people keep way more in their kitchen than like even a professional chef would need to have to prepare exquisite Michelin star meals. So kitchen, what are the big problem areas in the kitchen besides the fact that people are just dumping anything on the countertops?
Yeah, I think you hit it. I mean, it's really a volume issue. People think they have to have, say, an entire set of knives and a huge knife block where, according to my brother, who's, been a chef all over the world, you need 3 good knives. You need a paring knife, you need a serrated knife, and you need a chef knife. And when he travels, he typically just takes his chef knife and that does everything. And so he always is making fun of me and others with a million kitchen gadgets because he's like, this is insane. Like you have something that a knife can do the job of. Why not just have the knife? So I think it's like questioning, you can look at all of the kind of specialty items and kitchen gadgets and just ask yourself, can a knife do this? Right. And If so, that's a really easy way to free up space. I would say, I don't know why, but people have an insane amount of food storage containers, like Tupperwares and lunch boxes and bento boxes and mason jars. And they tell me, like, I have no space in my kitchen, but the average person has just an insane amount. Like, I'm talking dozens and dozens of food storage containers. So you can ask yourself, like, if I made a big meal, what would I contain the leftovers in? And what would be the most amount of containers I would actually need? And then get one nice set of like nestable, stackable containers. And you'll probably free up at least a few drawers and maybe a couple of cabinets.
What about if you're fortunate enough that you've got storage areas, right? Like you have this discretionary space in your home where you can store things. How do we look at those? I mean, you described the example there with your small basement where, you set a limit on like, I can fit this number of things. And it was like this artificial limit that you had set for yourself. And that helped you. How do we look at storage? I mean, I know sometimes like these storage spaces or these, not storage, I shouldn't say like a storage space, but like excess discretionary space that we use to store things, like an extra closet, a storage room in a basement. We just use them as like, hey, I'm going to dump everything here. And maybe one day I'll figure out how to organize this better. And then I go in there to organize it. My head hurts. And I just walk out and just do the same thing over and over again.
Yeah. So I think each space in your home, even if it is just a storage space, should have a purpose. And even if that purpose is like the point of this space is to contain our linens and our backup toiletries, right? It should be very clear and very concrete. I think most people, when they have a excess storage space, it does tend to become a dumping ground. So you can kind of reclaim it by just deciding, what do we want the function of this space to be, and what belongs here and what doesn't belong here. I always like to set up a space in the home that I call a general store. So like the place that has your batteries, your light bulbs, your toolkit, those things that people ask you for if you're kind of in charge of the home. Like for me as a mom, I constantly used to get asked, like, where's a Sharpie? Where's an index card? Where's a hammer? So I made a drawer that I call the general store. And it has all those things that we just need quick and easy access to. You could do this in a storage closet. You could recreate it in a laundry room. But I do advise for people to think about, like, what are those items that we just need constant grab and go access to? And can we make our own mini general store to shop from?
You know what I'm guilty of sometimes? Like I always wrestle like whether it's better to be efficient or to have less stuff. For example, like you go to the grocery store and you buy a set of 4 batteries because you need, 2 batteries right now and you want to have 2 extra AA on hand. Versus you go to Costco and you can get this, you get 50 batteries for this really efficient steal of a deal. And then you come home and you put 2 batteries in the item that you need the batteries for, and you have 48 batteries that you're trying to reconcile what to do with. How do you help people think through that? Like, when is it better to be financially efficient? When is it better to get the things that you need?
Totally. It's such a good question. I'm a little bit allergic to buying in bulk, but I have been corrected recently because it is more sustainable to shop in bulk for the items that you use on the regular, right? So it probably doesn't make sense to buy peanut butter in bulk because how many jars of peanut butter, I don't know, are you going to go through unless that's your favorite thing in the whole world? Maybe it is. Whereas like paper goods, like toilet paper or batteries, we will always use. And so for those things, those staples, maybe it's like shampoo. If you have storage space, it makes more sense both financially and from a sustainability standpoint because you have less packaging, less plastic waste when you buy in bulk. So the answer to your question would be, it makes more sense to buy in bulk for the items you know and are confident you will use on repeat for years to come. Anything else, I would give a pass to.
That is very helpful. I'm going to go get rid of some binder clips after this conversation. I went hog wild. I needed like a couple, those like, I don't know, some people call them butterfly clips or binder clips.
Yeah.
And I just went to Amazon and I was like, and I got like 500 binder clips and I need like 5. So
yeah. Love it.
we're going to start there. Okay. So now maybe there's 2 components to this, but let's say you get organized or you get a space organized. I find the hardest part is then keeping it organized. So let's assume you can get it organized by using all the tips that you're providing today and many of the tips that are in all of your books and in your newsletter and everywhere that you share your wisdom. Once you've gotten organized, what are the essential ingredients to staying organized?
Okay. So number 1, buy less stuff. And I know that sounds so silly and overly simplified, but if you saw what I saw on a regular basis, people get organized, but then the next day there's 12 Amazon boxes on their front porch, right? So if you constantly have an influx of stuff, you're never going to feel organized. So number 1 is really legitimately challenge yourself to question the items that you're bringing into your home. So start with just limiting volume. Number 2 is create a really simple habit or routine that keeps things in order how you've set them up. So there's volume, there's systems, and there's habits, right? So number 1, we talked about volume. The simplest thing that you can do to be more organized is to buy less stuff and use what you already have, right? Just stop accumulating. Number 2 is set up very simple, intuitive systems that a 5-year-old could use and understand. And that's even if you don't have kids, I would say make your systems 5-year-old proof, right? You want them to be so easy that there's no friction. If your systems are too complicated, you're not going to maintain them. So my filing cabinet has 5 files and it says business, car, home, kids, pet, right? So filing is not overwhelming because I have 5 compartments and I just toss any incoming paperwork that's relevant to the front of that file. It takes 2 seconds, right? If you make a very convoluted system, you're going to have too much resistance to maintain it. So make those systems as simple as you possibly can. And then with the habits, like we have so much resistance to establishing new habits. I'm a big fan of adding a treat, gamifying a habit. Like, can I put away all the things in under 2 minutes? Can I get the other people that I cohabitate with involved? So I have 2 teenage daughters. I have a husband. I have a dog. We're a very busy family. We try to clean up our entire house after dinner in under 15 minutes. Everyone kind of has a job. We put on music. We talk about our day and we knock it out so that we're waking up in the morning to clean countertops, the mail's in the mail bin. Even if we haven't dealt with everything, it's like a gift to our future self, right? To do that 5-minute or 15-minute tidy before bed.
Where does the stuff that you haven't dealt with go? The kid brings home, one of our daughters brings home a paper, permission slip for a field trip. The stack of mail comes in, like 90% of it's junk, but there's 2 things that I need to deal with that I just can't deal with right now. Talk about that.
Okay. So I think every household has to have an inbox. And this is a system that could not be simpler. It's one big vessel. So I have a big basket in my entryway. Everyone in my family knows if it needs attention, it goes in the inbox. Does that mean I review it every day? Absolutely not, right? It can sit there for a week, sometimes even 2 weeks. That's kind of my maximum. But that's where the papers go that I need to review for work, the school forms that my kids need me to sign. Anything that needs to be dealt with needs one container. And I think the mistake people make is they have a stack on their dining room, a stack on their kitchen, maybe an inbox in their office. I like to just have one centralized place that's like the action box. And then really you just need to have a habit of reviewing it. I would say at least once a week. I do a Sunday taking care of business meeting where I sit down with my family. I dump that basket out. I say to my kids, what needs to be done? We sign the school forms, we pay the checks, and we make a plan for the week ahead and kind of reset. And it probably takes about 15 to 20 minutes once a week on Sunday. It is a game changer, and it means we never have a mountain of bills or mail or to-dos. Likewise, I do laundry every Sunday. So it's kind of like having one batch time to take care of business means you get to kind of relax and enjoy the rest of your week.
Well, and you also don't have this, like all this context switching going on. I mean, I feel like life is challenging enough. You cannot ever eliminate all the context switching. I mean, life is context switching. There's so much going on, but I also feel like there's constantly things and people and devices and electronic and in-person and virtual that are tugging at our attention and distracting us. And that inboxing system and process that you've set in motion for your family eliminates not all of it, maybe, but it eliminates a lot of it.
It really does. And it's even, I mean, my kids now know, instead of coming to me, when they get home with a paper, they plop it in the basket. So it has eliminated that whole exchange of communication that used to interrupt my workday every 5 minutes. Now they're like, if this needs my mom's attention, I put it in the basket.
Okay. So now let's assume that as an individual, we've kind of figured out a game plan. We're going to take Shira's advice. This podcast is called Everybody Pulls the Tarp, and it's all based upon this mindset and philosophy that I have that was formulated over 20 years ago when I worked in minor league baseball. And the gist of it is, and many listeners have heard this before, but I show up on the first day thinking I'm going to be a front office intern learning the business of sports. And I quickly learned that we're short-staffed in all these areas relative to major league ball clubs. And I was going to have to pitch in and help out in all these other areas that I wasn't expecting, specifically helping the grounds crew pull the tarp on and off the field. And what many people don't realize is that a major league grounds crew has about 25 or 30 people to do this task that so many take for granted if you're a baseball fan, covering the field and uncovering the field. But in the minor leagues, at least in the organization I was working in, we only had 5 or 6 people. So everybody had to pitch in. So the everybody pulls the tarp mindset, as I talk about every week on this podcast, is this idea that people need to be willing to step up, do the unexpected, do the little things that matter. Never say that's not my job. It's about teamwork and leading by example and being part of something that's bigger than yourself. So in many ways, if we're cohabitants with somebody else, most of us have other people in our lives that all this stuff kind of impacts or relates to. What about the person who's listening who says, I can get this all figured out thanks to Shira's wisdom, but I have other people in my life who are not on board, partners, spouses, kids. How do I get all of us pulling the tarp together to lead a more organized life? Talk about that for a moment.
Yeah. Number one challenge for most people, myself included. So, I'm an organizing expert and a minimalist with 2 teenagers and a husband with hardcore ADHD who never grew up being tidy. So I am in it with all of you. There are 2 things that have been the most helpful. Number one is arriving at kind of a shared value statement for our home that we all agree to. So even though we're all very different, we all have very different clutter thresholds and ideas of what tidy or organized or stylish looks like. We can all agree we're a very social family. We want to have a home that's really easy to maintain, so we don't have to spend a lot of time cleaning or organizing because we're all busy. And we want to have a home that we can have other humans and friends drop by at a moment's notice without this massive scramble or cleanup, right? So this benefits all of us. So there is a shared motivation to keep at least the primary living spaces tidy and functional. Because then my husband, who's like the biggest extrovert I've ever met, he wants to have friends over. He knows, like, if our house is kind of tidy and minimal, we can always host, we can always entertain. Last night, the Warriors game was on. He invited the neighbors over, right? There's never that feeling of like our house isn't ready for other people. So finding a shared benefit or value is number one. And then the other thing is, I found there's never going to be a perfect place of agreement when it comes to what shared home should look like or feel like. But you've got to arrive at a shared vision for, I would say, minimally the living room, dining room, kitchen, and entry. And so what we've done in our home is those shared kind of communal spaces are very, very minimal, very easy to maintain, and they benefit all of us. But my husband has a shed that we built during COVID in the back of our house that has literal trash on the floor, dirty leaves that have flown in that he doesn't notice, right? It's like totally crazy to me. But for him, he's like, this is where I can just relax and do my thing and not feel like I have to tidy. So he's got his space. My space is more like our bedroom that I keep really minimal and lovely. And then my two teenagers get to do whatever they want with their rooms. So they get to hang posters all over. I don't care. They get to have laundry on the floor if that's how they want to live, right? So I really pick my battles in that way. And I think zoning your home so that everybody feels like they have at least one space that is reflective of their needs and wants and style, then you can get them on board much more easily for the rest of the home.
This is very fascinating, Shira. And I mean, life-changing. I mean, you're giving me ideas that I know are going to transform and change the way I live my life and the way others do as well. I want to spend the last few minutes kind of understanding you a little bit more. I mean, you're so passionate about all this stuff. It comes out in your work, which I've, listened to and read and gone through in the past, and certainly in our conversation today. You started your career in theater as an actor. You're very happy and content doing that for over a decade. When did that change? How did you become so obsessed with organizing to the point that you said, I'm going to make this my career?
Yeah. Well, so what actually happened is after a full career of life in the theater through my late 20s, I decided to leave the theater just because I knew I wanted to have a family. And my life in the theater kind of upended my life and schedule constantly. As you can imagine, I was always traveling. I was working nights and weekends. So it was a very painful decision, but I wanted to have a life I had a little more control over. So I started working in event production and catering. And only a few years into this new career, which I didn't actually end up loving, I got laid off when I was 8 months pregnant. And it was kind of this, life altering moment where we were a shared income family. Like, me and my husband live in the Bay Area. The cost of living is astronomical. We relied on my income. My income was gone in a second, and I was 8 months pregnant. And so we had to figure out, how are we going to make this work, knowing that probably no one's going to hire me when I'm 8 months pregnant. And it was literally because of that moment that I didn't know what to do. I just knew that I had to bring in some income for my family. And I had always helped my friends and family edit and organize their stuff for fun. I didn't think it was a job. I didn't think it was a career. And my friends and family said, you've got to do this. You've got to help other people. I didn't believe that anyone would pay for it, to be honest. This was over 15 years ago now. And so it was pre-Marie Kondo and pre kind of organizing being in the general zeitgeist and culture. But I really had nothing to lose. So I put out a website. I sent an email to everyone I've ever met, including my dentist, saying, if you are struggling with clutter or disorganization, I am offering in-home services. I could only do them on weekends because I was caring for our new baby at the time. And so I started this scrappy little business, seeing clients on weekends when my husband was home from work. And almost instantly, I had a wait list 3 months long. And I had no marketing budget. I had no business school experience. This was literally born out of, there's this random thing that I think I might be good at. And it seems that people have a problem that I might be able to help solve. And so that is really how my business was born. And I never would have guessed that it would have been more than a very temporary career until I figured out my next thing.
And it's just remarkable how that moment and that realization has led you on this journey where now people all over the world look to you as an expert on this important discipline of organizing, and not just organizing our homes, but organizing our lives, and how it's organizing. And I've learned through our conversation today, and like I said, listening and reading some of your other work, it's so much bigger than organizing. Organizing has this incredible power to influence our lives in such profound ways. As I think about our conversation, I'm actually reminded of a conversation that I had with Studio McGee founder Shay McGee. And she said to me, Andrew, she said, I could change someone's entire outlook on life with one lamp from Target. She said, you'd be amazed at what and how I could change the look of an entire room and turn someone's outlook on their life by buying a lamp from Target or shifting something that they already have, to use your point, looking at stuff that they already have, shifting something that they already have just a few inches further on the credenza. She said, and that applies to life as well. Little habits, little changes can profoundly impact our lives, our wellness, our perspective. And I think there's so much of that in what you share and the ideas that you share with the world as well.
Thank you. Yeah. I think what's interesting is people assume I'm really passionate about organizing. I would say I'm really passionate about people. And so what's been really impactful and kind of galvanizing about this career is that it's a way of helping people become the best versions of themselves through editing and organizing their home. I feel like it's a magic trick that I discovered at a young age. Like, you can improve your life, you can improve your home, you can improve your mindset simply by removing things. And that is free and available to everyone.
It is so powerful. I was struck by, in your latest book, Lifestyle, you write, I truly believe that no matter who you are and how you are feeling right now, you're only a few decisions away from beginning to completely transform your life. And I have to say, Shira, one of my best decisions was reading some of your work and asking you if we could have this conversation today. Thank you so much for the ideas that you share with the world and for spending a few minutes with me this week. There is no question in my mind, you are a tarp puller, certified tarp puller, forever a member of the Everybody Pulls the Tarp family, because you are helping others by doing the little nitty gritty things to lift ourselves up and lift up our lives as a result. Thank you so much for all that you do, Shira.
Oh, thank you. This was such a treat.
Thank you for joining me this week. Be sure to subscribe in your favorite podcast app so you can catch all of our upcoming episodes. And if you are like me and want a world full of tarp pullers, then leave a review to help others find us. You can also follow me on Instagram at AndrewMoses123 and sign up for my email newsletter at everybodypullsthetarp.com/newsletter. I'll share tips and insights to help you achieve maximum success and happiness. Until next time, keep pulling the tarp.